Not all other things, all other things in its class. Now we know this when if Judy sends me to the grocery store to buy milk, she'll send me a text, get milk. Can I buy whole milk, 2% milk, 1% milk? Can I buy buttermilk?
You better buy all of them.
I could. Well, I better buy all. That's probably right. Or maybe I need to buy all of them. I can buy anything that's milk. Can I buy coconut milk? Now, I can say yes, I can buy coconut milk, unless by other examples I know she doesn't ever use coconut milk and doesn't want it. But I can buy milk. If she says buy 2% milk, can I buy it in a quart or a gallon? Can I buy this brand or that brand? Yes, as long as I buy 2% milk. Saying milk excludes Pepsi and Coke and anything that's not milk. Everything in the class of milk is in milk. If I say 2% milk, that excludes whole milk or 1% milk. It puts it all in the class of whatever's in 2% milk. Whatever kind of brand it is, whatever quantity it is, will all be included. And if she wants it more specific, she needs to make it more specific and say, I need a gallon of 2% milk, of MacArthur brand milk. Now, that's fairly specific. Do you want the light carton or the dark carton? Do you want the plastic or paper carton? You see, so, that's real life, isn't it? That's how we think about things. But when you say something and God specifies a thing, it excludes everything that's not in that class of things and includes everything that's in that class. So you can't say, well, this authority is generic and this authority is specific. All authority is both generic and specific. I know that's a shock. If you've been in Churches of Christ very long, that's a shocking statement. And I've been challenged on that. And I don't think I can be challenged correctly, because there is no such thing as a specific statement. All statements are specific and generic. How can I say that? Is buy a gallon of milk, is that a specific statement or a generic statement? Buy a gallon of milk. Which is it? No. No. Oh, who said that? It's both.
It's specific to the size, but generic to the type.
Well, it's specific. It's specific to the size. A gallon is specific. But does it tell you to buy it in the jar or the carton? You're saying, or what about? But it's also specific with regards to the type of drink that you want. It's generic in respect to the type of milk that it is, because there's all different kinds of milk in that class of milk. But it's specific with regard to milk as opposed to Pepsi or water. Does that make any sense? That's the only way it can be. There's just no other way, given the logic and the nature of the world, that it can be any other way that I can see. Every statement is both specific and generic, and you have to decide what class of things it belongs in. So it's general in regard, or inclusive in relation to all specific types of things covered in its scope. She'll send me to the grocery store one time, and I'm there. I say, anything else you need? Yeah, get some cheese. Okay. This actual store. Get some cheese. So I walk over to the cheese like a stupid husband, and there are 150 kinds of cheese. From liquid cheese, and I was going to get the kind in the little spray can you put on crackers. I love that. Usually that was sardines when I was in college, you know. Do you think she wanted that kind of, oh, well, you know she doesn't want that. Well, how do I know that she doesn't want that? Command, example, inference. That's how I can learn what she doesn't want. But to the statement, get some cheese. What could I have bought, the cheese in the can or a block of cheese? Which could I have bought? Both, because cheese is generic in respect to the type of cheese that you get. Now, she didn't say buy bacon So if I bought bacon and said, well, it's just as good as cheese because it's food, no, she specified the kind of food that she wanted. Bacon and cheese are both food, but she specified the kind of food that she wanted, which was cheese. So I could only buy cheese. Yes, sir. This ought to be good because Travis is smiling.
Back in the 80s and 90s, cheese also meant money.
Oh, did it? Money, yeah. Or you can be a big cheese.
So yeah, so you can bring home the cheese.
Bring home the cheese. I was always told to bring home the bacon.
Or the bacon.
The bacon, yeah. But, so anyway. So when she said get cheese, I actually went, I walk over and I look at it and I thought, okay, I got to have a little more information.
Can I add something?
Can you add something? Okay.
By necessary inference, you knew we were having chili that night, so you should have known.
By necessary inference, I knew we were having chili that night. Okay, now that is true. That is true, but how do I know you wanted it for supper and not for something else you're doing? I didn't.
Well, I think
You think I knew.
Did you buy the wrong cheese?
Not after I texted her back and said, what in the world are you talking about? Okay.
he sent a picture of the whole thing.
I did what?
He sent a picture of the whole.
I took a step back from the aisle, I took a picture, I said, which one? I took a picture of the whole big thing of cheese. Which one? Pick one. She says get pork. Oh, I took a picture of the pork one day. Sent that to her. What pork do you want?
No matter what you get, it's going to be wrong.
Well, it could be wrong, yes. Now, I'll give her credit. She is very reasonable as a wife.
If you're bringing cheese to a Packer fan's house, they're all pretty good.
It's all going to be good. Well, cheese is all good for the most part, except Limburger and Liederkranz. But I'm saying you can't just, you have to analyze what's being said. And so in relation to some things, a statement like cheese is specific. If she says buy cheese and I brought home bacon, did I obey her? Did not. If she says cheese and I bring home Velveeta, but she wanted cheddar, was I wrong if she only said cheese? Which one could I bring if she said cheese? Any one I wanted to. Now, I might be wrong because she didn't give me enough information, but I'm dealing with a person. Now, if I'm dealing with God, and my point about the Bible is, this goes to another principle. I believe the Bible is inclusive. It has all things that pertain to life and godliness. God tells us that. He has given us all things that pertain to life and God. So if I only have limited information about something, that's what God wanted me to have. He wanted me to have what I would consider limited information about it. Or it has limits, and I need to respect those limits. And I'm going to give you some examples of this as we go along here.
And if you have questions, you need to look somewhere else and see what else.
Sometimes you can find the other information you need somewhere else, and sometimes you make wrong inferences somewhere else. But you have to say this information is not like a human being where she might have forgotten to say something. Or now she's gotten very specific with me now, and she does better for the most part. Except she'll say we need. She sent me the other day. We need 85% lean hamburger. Okay, so I'm there. Now get there. Think about that for a minute. Do you want it frozen or thawed, fresh? Do you want a pound or 2 pounds? 5 pounds? How much do you need? Do you think I'm being stupid for asking that? I'm not being stupid. Oh, you women can all laugh, but how do I know if she doesn't want? Because if I bought fresh, you say, well, why didn't you buy frozen? It's cheaper. Well, I know it's cheaper, but I thought you only wanted the best for me. Okay. Bob?
I can't take any. The answer is what we usually get. That's always the answer.
What we usually get. Well, then in that case, I'm going to come home and you go back to the store. Because what we usually get is what you buy is different all the time, and I'm not going to mess with it. So I'm trying to help, and I need help. So I used to do Nextel with her all the time. Before that, I just bought whatever I thought, and that was always wrong. So you're right. The answer is what we usually. Now, that's a good point, Bob, in that there are some things that are so plain in the Bible in the sense that that's what's there, that people for generations have always understood that's what it was. And that's probably a good place to start. Okay? And sometimes it's not, though, because they could have been wrong all along. But you see how we use this, and that's where confusion comes in everyday living, or it's where communication takes place. If she says, we need Diet Pepsi, she doesn't say that much, but if she said that, I would probably get 2 liters of Diet Pepsi, the 2-liter bottles, because that's what she usually buys. As soon as I did that without asking, how many do you want, she would say, oh, I wanted the little cans to take on a picnic. See? Now, the fault there lies in the communicator. The fault lies in the one doing the communicating, not in the person who's understanding it. Yes?
Maybe I missed something, but when you left the house after she said go get cheese, did you not know there were going to be several kinds of cheeses there?
I was already out. Yeah, but that doesn't change. I do that there's lots of kinds of cheese, but even if we're having chili, okay, which we grate Parmesan cheese on chili. Okay, not Parmesan. Excuse me. We grate cheddar cheese on there. I was thinking cheddar. We grate it on the spaghetti and the chili, and that's how our family eats it. Has since time immemorial, since the old country probably. And okay, well, you get cheddar cheese then. You should know you get cheddar cheese. Okay, now what's the next question when you get to the store, or before that, even while you drive? What's the next question? How much? And what? Mild, sharp, or blah blah blah, extra sharp. See, everything is generic and everything is specific. You guys are just proving my point.
Can you imagine the people dialing into our live stream for the first time today?
The people that were what?
Dialing into our live stream for the first time today?
They're learning something. He said, can you imagine people that are dialing into our live stream the first time? This is not a grocery buying class. I'm communicating. I have to bring the discussion down. All right. Thanks, Brian, for forcing me to say this. I have to bring the discussion down to the level of people that we're dealing with. I cannot be philosophical about this, because,
There go our fathers.
huh?
There go our fathers.
And everybody's just clicked off. No, I'm just teasing. We have to deal with it. My point about that is, we deal with this stuff in everyday life all the time. And yet we think I'm saying something special religious thing here. It's not common sense, because it's not common. It's just the only way we can communicate in these ways. And classes, that people don't understand classes and of this class of things or that class of things, and there are debates about that. It's debatable, and we'll show you why. We're going to come. These are the general principles. We'll come back and look at all this. So, it's authority to do one thing is specific and exclusionary in relation to all other things in this class. It's general or inclusive in relation to all specific types of things covered within its scope. For example, the command to Noah to build an ark of gopher wood was specific and exclusionary in relation to not building it or using some other kind of wood, among other things. It was general in relation to the kind of tools that were used. The tools or other methods of building were a matter of expediency, since God did not specify them. Noah was free to choose whatever aids he chose as long as they fell within the boundary of the general authority. He was not free to add to what God said. God told him how many floors on the ark to build, how many stories it had. Could he add a fourth one because I want a balcony? No. Or it'd be nice to have a balcony? He couldn't substitute something else. Well, I don't like gopher wood, I'm going to put oak in there. And so here's what you have. Now, we looked at this Sunday in the sermon, but I'm going to go back over this a little bit with you. So the law says, make an ark of gopher wood. That's Genesis chapter 6. Would it have been right to use oak? Why not? It's wood. within the class of things called wood, God specified a particular kind of wood. Okay? Now, suppose, like there are other trees, there was white gopher wood and red gopher wood, like white oak and red oak, right? Could he have used either white gopher wood or red gopher wood? Oh, no, he said to use gopher wood. You can't use red gopher wood. Or no, you got to use white gopher wood. We do this kind of stuff all the time. No. In the class of things called gopher wood, if there are different kinds of that, he can use whatever kind he wants to use or is available. But he can't use another kind of wood. Would a hammer or saw have been expedient to do that? If he had a hammer or saw or whatever, yes. If it's the word build then, or make is both specific and generic. How is the word make specific? Well, it's opposed to not making it.
Or destroying.
As opposed to not doing it or destroying it, yes, it's specific. Is make generic? Well, it is in regard to either making it with a saw, or with a hammer, or with this, or with that, other ways they do it. It's generic with regard to the manner of making. He didn't tell him how to make it. Well, he did some of it, but not a lot. He told him to put pitch on the inside and out and all that stuff. There's some rules about that. But in general, he didn't tell him what tools to use to make it. And yet, do we know that Noah had to have tools to make the ark? He did. That's a necessary inference. Can't be any other way that he had to use some kind of tools to make. Well, he could have used an alien spaceship with laser beams. Well, that's a tool. Okay? Some kind of tool, because humans can't see a tree and make an ark without using a tool. All right, would it have been right to bind only using a hammer? Well, no, the only tool you can use is a hammer. That would not have been right, because the word build or make is generic with respect to tools. So you can't bind one kind of tool and leave all the others out. Now, if you teach that you can only use one kind of tool, I think you're adding to God's word when you do that. You're adding something to God's word by saying you only use one kind of tool. Or he could only use red gopher wood. You just added something to God's word. Take the text for what it says and stay right there. Now then, here's another example of the law. Go into all the world. I use these common things just because people, you can summarize it. It's easy to put in a little circle on a chart. That's why I use it. Okay. That's as simple as it can be. So, go into all the world is a specific statement with respect to not going. Okay? Or not going into all the world. So, would it have been right not to go? No, that would have been wrong, because he said go. That's a command. That's a generic, a specific and generic. So, you can't leave. Well, how about a plane, a boat, or a camel? Would any of those be expedient? Well, yes, they would, because the word was go. If he said, sail into all the world and preach the gospel, or if he said, fly into all the world and preach the gospel, then you're limited to those specific kinds of going. Going is both specific with regard to not going, and it's generic with regard to the way that you go. Did he say walk? Oh, yeah, well, Paul and the apostles, they all walked. Did they? What about the boat that Paul got on and got shipwrecked on? Oh, I forgot about that. Well, yeah, because you weren't thinking properly about it. So, would it have been right to buy only going by camel? Now, this is a little bit, and I don't want to be unfair, but this is a little bit of what Mennonites and Amish do in regard to some of these things. They bind things from a particular time in history and say that's the only way it can be done. Now, to be fair, we haven't got time to go into this. There are reasons why what I just said is a little bit off, because they're not saying that's the only way it can be done. They're just saying this is what you should do. So it's another story, but they can't bind something from a particular historical era and say that's what going is. Now, if you teach it the only way you can go is by camel, I think you're a false teacher. You just added something to God's word when you say you can only go by camel. Now, we do this kind of stuff in churches, so be careful. It's easy to judge these people that only want to go by camel. You know, those Camelites. We judge them, but this is sorry, that just popped out. Some of you get it. All right, how about this? Now, this is one that's a little testier here. We went over this Sunday. The law calls the church of God, the household of God, the way, the church of Christ. Well, it really doesn't call it the church of Christ. The New Testament never calls the church of Christ. Did you all know that? It says churches of Christ salute you in Romans 16:16. Well, that's not the church of Christ. So they want to get specific about a name. You want to get a specific name? I demand that you be specific then. This is kind of the lawyer in me. I demand that you be specific. If you say that's a specific name, then let's be specific. The churches of Christ implies that each one of these churches is a church of Christ. So a local church could be called a church of Christ. With that, no problem scripturally. Now, I'm not saying it's a problem the other way. I'm saying if you want to be true to the text, you got to think about this. That's just some of the names. Let's use of those. So how about Presbyterian or Lutheran? I say no, because God has told you the descriptions to use for his people. To use some other thing like a Presbyterian or a Methodist or a Lutheran, which either talk about humans or methods of manners of organization, is not a scriptural name. How about, could any New Testament designation be expedient? Could I use any of these on a sign if I wanted to? I say yes. I can use more than this. I could use the way. I could use the household of God. I think I got that on there. I could use the church of the living God. I could use lots of different names. The most common one is church of God, small c. None of them have a capital C in any text that I know of. Would it be right to bind only using Church of Christ? No, it's not right to bind only using Church of Christ. Is it okay to use it? Yes. But is it right to bind it as the only one? I don't think it is. Because when you do that, you'd be adding to God's word. Because God didn't bind one name. If God wanted there to be one name for the church, guess what he would have done? What do you think he would have done? He would have told you what that name was. He would have specified it clearly what the name was. And guess what? You would have to use that name, and so would all the devil's churches. They would all use the same name. So you still couldn't tell. Using one name that you've picked out doesn't solve the problem of which church to find. Because the devil's going to use them all anyway. Yes, sir.
What would you think about the 33 AD Church of Christ?
Well, if I knew it was 33 AD, maybe. But I would go further, and I don't want to get him.
The reason I'm asking,
Churches were not defined like the Hope Church of Christ. Let's say Hope, Arkansas. Or the One True Living God Church. They were defined by where they were usually. The Church of God at Corinth. Or the Church of Christ on Savona Boulevard.
the reason I'm
Okay,
asking,
all right.
I had some friends in the Philippines who go to the Church of Christ, and where they went, they had big bands and rock bands and everything. So I got to searching on the maps for a different, try to find a sound congregation. I found one that said 33 AD Church of Christ, and their sound.
Okay, look, they were doing that to distinguish themselves from these other churches. And the devil will play that game with you of pick a church, pick a name. But I think you should probably use something that designates a location if you're going to do it. Why? Because I have some Bible examples of that. That's all I would say. I can't say that I would bind that completely on some other group, but I would say that's the safest course to take is to use a location because that's what I have in the Bible. Corinth, Thessalonica, those names. Philippi, saints at Philippi.
That kind of told me right off that they're going to be sound.
Wouldn't tell me that they were going to be sound, necessarily, but
None of the rest.
that's what people say about the word Church of Christ. They'll tell you they're sound. Well, that's not true. Okay? And that's my point. The devil uses whatever... All right, if God has specified a name, think counterfactual with me for a moment. If God had specified a name, the devil would have made all of his counterfeit churches have the same name, so you couldn't tell. Since God didn't specify a name, the devil says, okay, pick a name. You pick a name, I'll pick a name. You pick a name, I'll pick a name. And now we have pick a name. And how do you find the true church of Jesus Christ? You got to do what you did. You got to go look at it and see what it is. See, that's still only way to find out what it is by what. Now, when I read somebody who puts up Presbyterian or Methodist or Lutheran, I can pretty much know right away that they're not going to follow the New Testament pattern. They're going to follow a Presbyterian or Methodist or Lutheran creed.
They can't say 33 AD Baptist Church.
Well, they would say they could. They would say the 4 BC Baptist Church, because John the Baptist was preaching in 4 BC. But we don't even know if it was 33 AD. That's the problem. We don't know. Well, okay, they could put the close to 33 AD Church of Christ, or the almost 33 AD. We don't know that for sure. But anyway, theoretical question. Anyway, how about lay by and store on the first day of the week? That's the law says. On the first day of the week, let each one of you lay by and store. Is it right not to give? And I don't think it is. Can you collect it can the church take up collections on a Thursday? Not according to this verse. A collection, not somebody give something for some special need. Now this is another whole story. Can we pass the basket or pass the people? By that I mean, should we pass the basket around this way, or should I have you get out of your seat and walk up here and drop it in the basket and go on? Or how about handing it to the treasurer?
It's not told how to do it.
What's that?
It's not told how to do it.
Since the command to lay by and store is specific with regard to not doing that and other things. The command to lay by and store on the first day of the week is specific with regard to the day of the week. It is generic as to the manner of laying by and store. The way it's done is generic. In the sense, so it includes all the other options. So is it right to buy only one method? And the answer is no. And I've had discussion with people that, oh, you're such a radical because you say you could pass the people in front of the basket or you give it to the treasurer. No, I'm not a radical. Well, I am, and that they don't use the word right. Radical means going back to the root. What does the scripture, what does the text say? Not what, now they'll usually end up appealing to what churches of Christ have always done. Okay, that has a little bit of merit.
But just because you've always done it that way.
That don't mean it's necessarily the right way to do it. And it's certain. I don't care if we've always done it one way here or not. If it works and we want to do it, but to say that's the only way you can do it, that's a whole other matter. To say we at this church pass the baskets is one thing, and we've always done it that way, and that's okay too. To say that's the only way it can be done, now that's a whole different matter, completely different matter to me. I will die on that hill. That's not correct. And I want my children to have that same attitude when they think about what churches ought to do, is that they're going to look at it from what the text says and do what they understand is right to do according to the text. That's what I want. I don't want them to say, well, my daddy did it this way. They would be correct to do that, of course. But I would rather them not do that, because the church has to keep going and be pure in generations on down the road. Only way it happens, go back to the text. Yeah.
If you talk to someone that's always used instrumental music, say, well, we've always done it.
That's what they say. We've always done it this way.
Make it right.
And they get very proud about traditions. These are our traditions we've upheld, and so, okay.
So what you're telling me is you would die on the hill of the first day of the week.
I would die on the hill of doing exactly what the text says and not binding what the text does not say. Yes, that hill I'll die on.
The first day of the week.
And that would be the first day of the week. As opposed to churches taking collections any old day you have a tent meeting. If we were to have a tent meeting here, put a tent up in the back, have a tent meeting. And I've been to tent meetings. I've held tent meetings at churches I've been at before. When you go to one on the side of the road that you see, what days of the week do they take up a collection at a tent meeting? Have you ever been? I don't care what night you go, you will have a collection. Okay? You can go any night. If they have 3 services a day, you will have a collection at every one on any day of the week. That's how people do tent meetings, collect their money. That's not acceptable, in my view. To take up a collection. Now, if the man were to say, look, I make my living, as it were, on people's free will contribution. If you would like to help me continue to do this, you can bring me some money afterwards, and I'll be glad to take it from you. I don't have a big problem with that. But for the church to take up a collection, or they take up collections in the Bible classes on Wednesday nights in denominational churches. Teach the children to take up collections in the Bible classes because they want to go to see King Tut, so they take up a collection. All right, that's walking down the wrong road completely, because you can't justify that from the text, in my opinion, my understanding. Now, Gary, what was the point you're making besides trying to make me look bad?
Well, that's one of the things, that it's on the first day of the week. So then we come back, okay, how do we define the first day of the week? And I know our society different, the way our society defines it is the way we do it. So basically, how do you define the first? The second thing I would think about is, how do you define a collection of the church?
All these things have to be defined, and we can talk about that in another class. And that's right. What is a collection? Is that the same thing as people giving? Is me giving a collection? And so I think we sometimes confuse it, and maybe I'm confused. He tells individuals to lay by in store into a treasury, or to lay by in store means to treasure up. Literally means to treasure up. So you're putting in a treasury.
Isn't there a specific, strong need or urgent need, like in Acts 5, that they took up money for?
Okay, let me just say this. Let's put off detailed discussions of the collection just a bit. Yes, she said, is there not a need that needs to be expressed? Yes, there is. And so rather than get any more knee-deep into collection, because two things cause problems, or three things cause problems: the collection, the Lord's Supper, and the singing. But they have to be discussed separately. Now, is that the second bell? All right, let me just put this up here. We'll probably have to come back to this. So, the specific and generic authority. Now, this leads us into another discussion of all the business. Whenever God says, do this, the discussion then is going to come as to how that's going to have to be done. You have to do it some way. When he says assemble on the first day of the week, that necessarily implies two things. You cannot have any assembly of any kind, whether it's a PTA meeting or at your family dinner table or a church, unless you have a time and a place. That's necessarily true. Can't be any other way. You cannot have an assembly by saying we're going to meet on Monday and leave it at that. Will you have a meeting on Monday? No, because nobody knows where to meet. You can't say, well, we're going to meet in Port St. Lucie on Monday.
Not specific enough.
You don't know where to meet. Okay. You have to have a time and a place. Now, the question is, does God decide the time and place to meet, or do we? Well, with regard to the day of the week, God decided that. With regard to the time of day, because if I say, we're going to meet in Port St. Lucie on Tuesday or on Sunday, is that enough to have a meeting? You got to tell them when to be there, or you can't have a meeting. Meeting implies being together, and you can't do that unless everybody knows where to be and when to be there. It's just logic. And so, since God didn't say the time of the day, we get to decide that. And it can be any time of the day that we choose, within the bounds of the first day of the week. Now, Gary's going to bring up the 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and all that. That's a good discussion.
No, I'm just saying, we've got to think about these things.
Sure.
You've got to define what you're talking about.
What the day of the week is and the time of the day and all that. Yes.
Sets and subsets that you should have had in mathematics in high school.
Is that the word you're using instead of class of things, as sets and subsets?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.